Hi, everybody. It's Peter Schiff. It is Tuesday, December 29th, 2009. Well, a very quiet day in the market today. Stock market basically flat, dollar very flat. Gold dropped about $10. I guess that was the biggest move, but everything seems pretty quiet. I wanted to comment a little bit more on the subject I touched on yesterday on the Patriot Act and the problems there. You know, sometimes when I've gotten into arguments with people about the Patriot Act, they always say that, well, we need it. Even if we're surrendering some liberty or surrendering some rights, we have to do this. It's the price that we have to pay to fight terrorism. Well, I don't think that's a price worth paying. I think we have to fight terrorism, but we have to do it while preserving our constitutional rights. Because if we sacrifice our constitutional rights to get the terrorists, then the terrorists won. Right? I mean, I want to catch criminals, but I don't want the police to violate the Constitution. We know that if they arrest somebody and they don't properly read them their rights, or if there's an improper search, that the evidence is tainted, convictions are thrown out. We know that there are some guilty people that get off because of the Constitution. But that doesn't mean we set aside the Constitution because we want to fight crime. The same thing has to do when it comes to the federal government and fighting terrorism. We want to fight terrorism, but we don't want to surrender our liberties. Let me remind you of a couple of quotes by some very famous people. One, Benjamin Franklin, one of my favorite quotes from Franklin. "They who give up an essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty or security." That's a powerful quote from a very smart man. Also, Somerset Maugham, the English playwright, has another famous quote. "If a nation values anything more than freedom, it will lose its freedom." And the irony of that is that if it is comfort or money that it values more, it will lose that too. And by comfort, he's referring to security, safety. So if we're willing to give up our freedoms so that the government can fight terrorism, not only will we lose our freedoms, but we won't be safe either. So it's not worth the trade-off. And there are great quotes from men throughout history warning us about this. So we can't simply say, terrorism is a problem, therefore anything that fights terrorism or anything that makes it easier to fight terrorists, we need to support it. We can't support it if it means that we give up a constitutional rights in the process. Otherwise, what are we fighting for? Anyway, something else that happened today that rather annoys me that I thought I'd point out is this news on the pay packages for Fannie and Freddie executives. Apparently, the government is negotiating these pay packages, and the executives of these two companies are going to be paid anywhere between $4 and $6 million apiece. Now, I'm not really sure how many executives there are, but why are they getting paid this amount of money? Fannie and Freddie are bankrupt. They're worthless companies. They're, in effect, government agencies. Now, I know the stocks of these companies are still trading. They're around $1.20 to $1.50 a share. That's because a lot of people are too foolish to understand that the stocks are worthless, and they will go to zero. These companies are never going to make a profit, and they're never going to pay a dividend. They are absolutely worthless. In fact, the government confirmed this on Friday. I mentioned in the blog, the government had guaranteed $400 million worth of Fannie and Freddie debt. That obviously wasn't enough, because now they had to come out and say, we guarantee an unlimited amount of their losses, meaning the losses could be well in excess of $400 billion. So these companies will never make money. They are government agencies. Without the government, they would already be bankrupt. Why are we paying their executives $6 million apiece? That doesn't make any sense. Private companies can pay their executives $6 million because they can justify it based on the need to generate a profit, to have capital gains, to have dividends. But Freddie and Fannie will never generate profits, will never pay dividends, and won't have any capital gains. There is no justification for these salaries. In fact, they should be governed by compensation rules for the federal government. How can the guys that are running Freddie and Fannie, that amount to nothing more than a government agency, how can they be paid more than the President of the United States? They should be paid less. It doesn't make any sense. We should be up in arms. I mean, what's the logic? If we don't pay them the $4 to $6 million, they're going to quit? Let them quit. I mean, does it take a special skill to lose hundreds of billions of dollars? Anybody can do that. My 7-year-old can run Fannie and Freddie. What difference does it make who's in charge there? This whole thing is nonsense. What, are we afraid that if we put someone in there, they could lose even more money than the guys that are already running the institutions? We should be writing our congressmen. This is absolute nonsense. At the same time, politicians are criticizing executive pay on Wall Street where it's really none of their business. Now, I wish they hadn't bailed these companies out in the first place. And if they hadn't bailed them out, they wouldn't have anything to criticize because a lot of these guys would have got pink slips. But where they can say something is with Freddie and Fannie. These are government agencies, basically. They can stop this ridiculous pay. This is nonsense to pay these people $4 to $6 million. It's hypocrisy, pure and simple. Speaking about hypocrisy, I also read yesterday a story about the Fed's part of their exit strategy now to get out of this, monetary easing. And I've said repeatedly, there is no exit strategy. This is the Roach Motel of monetary policy. There's no way out of it. But they want to basically they said that they're going to pay the banks to take their money and loan it back to the Fed for 6 months to a year. They're basically saying that they're going to let the banks buy CDs or the equivalent of CDs at the Fed. Well, this whole gimmick is ridiculous because they're keeping interest rates low. So they're giving banks money at practically nothing and then allowing the banks to lend it right back to them at a higher price. And they're going to give them a free, risk-free profit. I mean, what's up with that? And why do they want to do that? The banks want to do that. The Fed wants to do that to make sure that the money that they're giving to the banks doesn't actually go into the real economy. Well, then why are they giving it to them? So they can simply recycle it back to the Fed and the banks can make profits that they didn't earn and that they don't deserve? And, of course, this is going to compete with the Treasury. Right now, the banks are taking the cheap money from the Fed and loaning it to the Treasury by buying long-term Treasury debt. If instead they loan the money back to the Fed, then that's going to force up interest rates for the Treasury. I mean, this whole thing is a gimmick. None of it makes sense. They're all trying to find ways to gracefully exit a situation where there is no exit because they can't really withdraw the liquidity. They can't really take back that money. They can't allow interest rates to rise because this whole phony recovery will come collapsing down. And speaking about the phony recovery, we got information today, from Case Shiller that shows that real estate prices are no longer falling. They've kind of leveled out. And the media is hyping this up to show, the situation is improving, it's going to turn around. The only reason real estate prices aren't falling is because the government is throwing in everything but the kitchen sink to prop them up. You've got government tax credits for buying houses. You've got the Federal Reserve buying mortgages. You've got the government guaranteeing mortgages. You've got interest rates artificially low. You've had the government now intervene again in the mortgage-backed security market by extending unlimited guarantees to Freddie and Fannie debt. The government is doing everything they can to keep real estate prices artificially high. Why does the government have to do that? Why do all the mortgages have to come from the government? Because the private sector won't lend. Because the mortgages are too risky. And why are they too risky? Because the prices are still too high. So we're doing all this to artificially keep them levitated. It's not going to work. Eventually, prices are going to have to fall. The only way for them not to fall is if inflation is so rampant that the dollar falls by so much value that the nominal price of real estate doesn't go down. But unfortunately, the real price will collapse even more. And the big thing is all the inflation that the Federal Reserve is creating to prop up the real estate prices, since the underlying fundamentals of our economy are so bad, the inflation is not going to translate into higher wages, higher salaries for a lot of people that are going to be struggling to make their mortgage payments. So the classic approach of trying to create inflation to make housing affordable isn't going to work because the wages aren't going to rise and ultimately interest rates will, and real estate prices are going to have to come down. There is no way around that. They have to get to a market clearing level. But the more the Fed intervenes in the economy, unfortunately, the lower real home prices are going to have to fall. And in the final analysis, maybe they can keep real estate prices artificially high, but if the cost of heating is going up, if the cost of air conditioning, if the cost of maintenance is going through the roof, none of it is going to matter because the people who are living in those homes are still going to feel a lot poorer as a result of Fed policy. Anyway, that's it for today. Don't forget about my radio show tomorrow, Wall Street Unspun. I'm not going to be able to host it because I have a political commitment, but it's going to be running anyway, so make sure and tune in. And if I have the opportunity, I'll call in and make some comments from the road. Take care, everybody.